Proton pump inhibitors are some of the most commonly taken medications in America. Every day, millions of Americans take PPIs in the form of medications like Nexium and Prilosec. But what they don't realize is that these medications have been linked to dangerous kidney diseases that the manufacturers were aware of. And in spite of these dangers, the FDA remained relatively silent about this issue for years. Recently, Mike Papantonio discussed these dangers with attorney Neil Overholtz, so let's take a look at that discussion.
Neil, again, it's just amazing to me. I remember an era when we were doing a pharmaceutical story maybe once every 6 months. Now there's a new pharmaceutical that we're hearing is killing people or it's crippling people in one form or another. This new case that you and your partners are working on right now is very scary. Nexium, that purple pill. Tell me about how has this developed into such a big medical issue?
So, Mike, you're right. The scariness and the what people described maybe over a decade ago as potential catastrophic consequences may have happened because the company that makes these proton pump inhibitors, AstraZeneca, didn't do anything about it. It's very scary. You're talking about a drug, Nexium, that is the most prescribed drug in the United States, most used drug. Last year alone, or in 2014 alone, it accounted for 15% of all prescriptions nationwide. And the scary consequence is kidney disease. Kidney disease is one of the most devastating diseases facing America's health system today.
Okay, let me stop you right here. Okay, you've got a proton pump inhibitor that's used for esophageal reflux, acid reflux symptoms. That, first of all, if you look at the numbers and you look at what the literature that's coming out on it, says only about 25%, only 25% of the people who are using this actually need it.
That's right.
And it goes on and talks, Neil, about the idea that people are becoming addicted to the treatment. Once they start taking the drug, they can't stop taking the drug. Articles coming out that once they stop taking the drug, if they did not have esophageal reflux, after they stop taking it, they develop it. This is, and now add to it, the latest is it's closing down people's kidneys.
That's right.
This is another one of those stories. You go, what in the hell was the FDA doing? Where was the FDA in all this?
It's the mystery of all mysteries for a drug that is this widely prescribed, for a class of drugs that came into the market over 25 years ago, for this to have been brushed under the carpet for so many years is truly amazing. I've reviewed the FDA review papers when these drugs were approved and sent to market. There's not a discussion of the renal problem. And Mike, where was the FDA? But you and I both know, and doing this as part of how we make a living, is that these companies have the responsibility to bring these issues to the FDA and to bring them to doctors. And they were being told by doctors as early as 1992 and continuing for the next decade, we think we see a problem here because this kidney disease that we're seeing in our patients, this is a kidney disease that is caused by drugs. It's not a different type of kidney disease. This is a specific type of kidney disease that is drug related.
In other words, they knew about it. Yeah. In other words, Neil, as you see, this is something you specialize in, just like I do. We see sometimes real patterns. In this pattern, they can actually see the kidney disease in the biopsy. They can tell this is a kidney disease that's directly related to proton pump inhibitors. So there's a term called pathognomonic. I don't think this is quite pathognomonic, which is to say there is one sign and one sign only. But this is a pretty strong sign of evidence when they can do pathology and then ask the patient, well, did you take Nexium? Did you take Prilosec? Let's talk about your history a little bit here.
No, you're right, Mike. The pathognomonic is something like in the fen-phen diet drugs where a pathologist at the Mayo Clinic looked at the pathology on these patients' heart valves and says, this is unique. This is unique to that diet drug, and we have a real problem, and blew the lid wide open on that litigation that a lot of people are familiar with. Here you had pathologists in the 90s and early 2000s saying, I'm seeing acute interstitial nephritis. a really serious damage to the kidneys that's drug related. Now, you got to say, well, which drug was it? What drug were they taking? Well, so the studies that have looked at this most recently, and one of the studies that looked at a series of cases at major hospitals as far back as 2004 said, we can determine based on their medical records of these patients that are being reported, what drug did they start before this drug reaction happened? And they were convinced. They were convinced and wrote it in peer-reviewed medical literature that we are convinced it's these proton pump inhibitors like Prilosec and Nexium that are causing this problem.
And why, Neil, I think I know the answer to it, because both you and I have always had to work these cases, and we always see a dysfunctional, almost, I would go as far as saying almost a useless FDA. But the FDA knows about this information. They're getting it directly from the doctor. Look, I'm reading the same material. All I got to do is read this material that's coming out from doctors every week. It's saying this stuff has the ability to cause kidney disease. It can shut down the kidneys. They've been talking about for years that it causes hypomagnesemia, which is it's where it rids your system of magnesium, which you need, which in effect causes bone fractures, it causes heart disease, it causes blood test abnormalities, it causes liver toxicity. I mean, why is it that right now, as you described in your review of this case, they've been looking at it for years, but still, all you got to do is go to the store and buy it, and there's no warnings on those packages at all.
So the FDA, as you know, Mike, can't require a company to do a study. And so when these doctors come forward with a review of a few cases in their hospital and say, look, we can look at the slides of the kidney tissue. We know that there's a drug problem here. You should do a study. That's what these doctors were telling the companies and the medical community back in the 90s and early 2000s is you should do a study. But the first time we ever saw a true epidemiological study to show an increased risk of either a immediate kidney injury or causing chronic kidney disease that leads to dialysis and even death was in 2014. And so it wasn't until 2014 that anything about kidney disease related to these drugs was even added to the labeling of these products.
What do you tell people? I mean, look, you say the same thing to people that I do, and that is, you know, go see your doctor about it, but don't take this stuff anymore. You know, most of the people who take it don't even have classic acid reflux. And then they take the drug and then they develop acid reflux after they stop taking it.
It's a really big problem, Mike. I mean, you can go to the store like I did last night and buy a box of Prilosec over the counter. You get the pills because you're having heartburn. And this is, we know so much more about what causes gastric reflux disease. And we know that it's mostly caused by bacteria today, and antibiotics may be the right therapy as opposed to another drug. But you buy this at the store, the only information you get is on the box. There's no write-up, there's no information, there's no doctor to tell you about what the risk may be. It's a really big problem. And people, if they're having a gastric reflux problem, they need to go see their doctor and find out the real root cause of that problem, and not just assume because of some fancy commercials, the purple pill and purple boxes at the store and the big displays, that they can treat their gastric reflux, their heartburn, with a purple pill. They need to go talk to their doctor.
Neil Overholtz, I'm glad you're working on this case. You got great years of experience. You've got great history of great results. And I'm hoping you'll get to the bottom of this. We will certainly help you do that. Thanks for joining me, okay?
Thank you, Mike.